And yeah, we are live. We are live. Hello, people. Hello, all the beautiful people out here. So the winters are on its peak back here in Delhi, India, and we have such a beautiful face today with us. Rodrigo from Brazil have joined in, and I have linked his YouTube channel. First, not talking about YouTube, he is a social critic, he is an anthropologist, studied from San Francisco University. That's a university, right, if I'm not wrong?
Yeah, it was in San Francisco, the city, but where I studied post-colonial anthropology was in the California Institute of
California.
Integral Studies.
Okay.
Integral Studies.
So that's a part of Caltech campus?
No, it's not. It's a separate non-profit institute.
Okay.
It was founded by an Indian thinker called Sri Aurobindo.
Oh.
So it was founded by him, I think, in the 60s or early 70s.
Okay.
But the programs there are all about humanities.
Mm-hmm.
They developed into various factions, which are some of them more spiritualistic, but anthropology program tended to be, when I was there, more of an activist and critical thinking type of program.
Okay, so Rodrigo back here, this is a man who knows his stuff, and you can go through his YouTube channel. There is an English playlist if you want to go through that, and anyone from the community can call real people in so that they could join in. And yeah, so today we are gonna cover everything about Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, because Friedrich Nietzsche is someone who is misinterpreted by many. And many just worship him due to him being mentioned in self-help YouTube videos and self-help YouTube channels. His concept of Superman, not knowing what the actual Superman is, what he wanted to convey. Many people, just having his book, one of his best work, the masterpiece, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, in their bookshelves, trying to show themselves off that they are mere philosophers, but not understanding the gist of the book. So today we have the man, and we are gonna discuss everything about Nietzsche. So if someone who is not able to join the stream, they can just watch the video once it gets uploaded. You should also share and subscribe Rodrigo's channel. Okay, so first question for you, Rodrigo, is the first thing is, how can you explain Nietzsche as a human being, or as a man, as a person, as a philosopher, to a common man, to a layman? How can you explain who is Nietzsche?
Right. Well, first, there's no way we can talk about everything Nietzsche talked about here.
Yeah,
of course,
for sure.
But I understand you are saying let's be open and talk about whatever comes up. But that's a really good question. Who was Nietzsche? Nietzsche was somebody that, of course, lived life to an intensity that was very strong intensity with life. He really, which means not that he just wanted to take life seriously, but that he wanted to play very seriously too, to have joyful life seriously too, which means like to give in to life as much as he could. This, of course, went forward with his life, and you can see him continuously coming back to that, even writing a book, which is for me his greatest philosophy book, with directly a philosophical tone, not like Zarathustra, which has a lot of his philosophy there, but it's a fiction, right? So in the gay science for me, which is his major directly philosophical work, he calls it the gay science, which means the happy, joyful science, right? Which is the joyful knowledge. So Why joyful? Because knowledge that could be coming from a life that is willing to live life itself with joy, that is attuned to get away with anything that pulls one down in a way of, flow of joy, of energy for life, will to live, all those things. Just get away with that, and as much as he could. And he points to historical and cultural and knowledge and linguistic legacies that were, in his view, from inside the Western and Christian cultures, pulling one down, crippling people, disengaging them from their own bodies sometimes. So all his critique of how from Plato's metaphysics to Christianity, this whole will for the truth as the will for another world, as disengagement from the body, from life, as the best solution, was for him not a best solution. Of course, it was to be critiqued. It was to be seen. Why were people talking about this? Why did they, most of all, create this? Because he could not believe that this was life. From his own life, he could, although he had, during most of his life, he had physical problems, corporeal injuries, sickness that sometimes kept him sleeping with heavy headaches for days without being able to get up. Even though he had all those corporeal realities that could lend him to give in to these thinkings that, well, I'm suffering, but when I die, it will be all right. He never gave in to that. He went to the opposite way. He's like, well, this is life. Let me charge in. Let me give me more.
Live dangerously. Live dangerously.
I can handle, and because life was, of course, not only that. He had his moments, of course, also when he got out of sickness and could feel the other side of life, or other many sides of life. Nietzsche was not a person to fall into dualistic perspectives on life, good or bad, true or false.
Yes.
He questioned those, sickness and health. Things are always very mixed for our experience if we pay attention, for really paying attention. Because in his moments of great bodily sickness, he had some of his best insights into life and into willing for himself other ways of experiencing himself and life. So things are not, black and white only. They mix. One thing leads to another. And it's not that you can only have great thought from misery or suffering. It's not that either. It would be too easy if life was only about, you want to write a great book, then just suffer. Well, we would see, artists will be torturing themselves every day, and some do, but I think it could work for some people for some time, but I don't think it works for all the time. I think it could be very counterproductive even. And I think Nietzsche would agree, because he said many times his critiques of negative and nihilist philosophers or pessimist philosophers like Schopenhauer is that, well, this guy, he's saying that life is all suffering and boredom, but how is he living then? How is he living life to be able to call it that? So philosophy for Nietzsche is directly related to how one lives a life, to the mode of living of a thinker. So it doesn't mean that we can draw a transparent parallel between reading one's book and knowing how that person experiences the world. It's not that. Language and reality are not transparent to each other for Nietzsche, but when you read, something is happening there. When a philosopher is saying things, something is happening there. And when you're looking into the whole context, cultural, historical context, when you're looking also, why not, at the philosopher's life and everything, you can make a lot of inflections and reflections about, well, why is this person, for example, Descartes or Kant, why are these metaphysicians that are also Christian in an European culture saying these things about a supposedly interior self that has the truth, that knows, and that has a high universal rationality? And why in this case, And if you look then at the history of the production of culture, of subjectivity, you can get lots of ideas of why these people were reproducing ways of being and ways of thinking of their own cultures and not reflecting about it. And Nietzsche goes right into those big legacies, to name at least two, which is Platonism as a way of doing metaphysics. It's not the only way, but a certain form of metaphysics that later Christianity took on and transformed it into a religion, into a way, Nietzsche says, of the Platonism of the masses, into a way of a further negation of one's body, of reality as we know it, in the name of a supposedly higher reality that's outside of us. And for him, that there's no bigger nihilism than that. And of course, at first in Christianity, what founded all these values of another world as higher values was God. The idea of God sustained this idea that this life is of lesser value than the afterlife, right? Or the pre-life, like Plato or some kinds of Christianity. And then you have the fall, and we are inside a lesser life going to a higher life again. So Nietzsche was like, okay, this happened, and then they put God at the center of all values. But this same culture, when it progresses, when it gets to the 18th century or even earlier, is continually critiquing its own values. And then God itself is critiqued. God itself is not the center of the world anymore for dominant Western societies. Now there's something else. It's called man, and it's called morality. Morality for Nietzsche is that which, because before, the good and the bad, or good and evil, right and wrong, true and false, were all to be given by God. For the Middle Ages, for 1,000 years of Christianity. And then slowly, some philosophers, thinkers start to question that and start to carve out another space which would be called man. But this man took the place of the so-called God, of what they called God. This man progressively came to be that which is now studying what is the true, what is the false for himself, what is the right, what is the wrong for himself. So he displaces, he kills God with his own morality, but morality which then was the result of God's wish or of the existence itself of God now is something that can be understood rationally, even through science. And nowadays you have, for example, experts in cognitive sciences or in psychology, humanities, like Sam Harris, Steven Pinker, all these guys saying, we will know the truth of morality for man, for the world. They're saying this, like in the book, The Moral Landscape by Sam Harris. So this idea that now man can govern himself, can know what is good for him, can know what is bad for him, universally, dictated by science. Wow, wonderful, right? But it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
For sure.
Because it's still that wish to know everything. And in a way, it's another point in the history of nihilism. Because the history of nihilism is the continual history of debunking, taking away from the altar the higher truth and replacing it with a new higher truth.
Okay.
And then you debunk again. You had God, you have man, and now you don't have man, you have science, rationality, and then you'll have another.
Constant upgradation.
A constant look for the highest new truth, for the best new truth that man can find. But we are still inside the foundation called man, that replaced the foundation for Western societies called God. And when I say Western societies, it's because you have all kinds of societies and cultures in the world. We cannot speak for everyone, but we can point specifically the dominances in Western societies, which doesn't mean that even when we say Western societies, everyone thinks the same. Otherwise, there would be no Nietzschean critique or Foucauldian critique from within it. So there are always differences. There are people looking at these legacies and saying, this is not the only way. These dominant ways, people are thinking, living, and experiencing themselves are just dominant ways. They're not the only ways, even within the West. So we're not making a critique of the West as a thing that doesn't exist. You know, that doesn't exist. It's not a man. You know?
Yeah, I get you.
Because this tendency is the problem. The tendency to think that things are objects to know and that we can know them as humans. We can have access to a full knowledge. This is what exactly we are critiquing. So our critique cannot come back at us and say, oh, but you're doing the same thing. No, we're not. We're talking about specific dominant patterns and legacies that we're pointing to as problematic. And why are they problematic? Because they are promising falsehoods. Because also, more importantly, because falsehoods were always promising, we're always doing. More importantly, these are violent ways of dealing with reality because they legitimate certain forms of violence, of silencing others, silencing difference, silencing about ways of thinking that could have more space. They don't, because there's man taking over the whole space of discourse and institutions, practices, you know.
Yeah, I get you. A question I just wanted to add one question right here, which was, I was having a live stream. Recently I was having a live stream and someone came up to me in the chat and wrote to me that what is the difference between, not a difference, he was saying that Eastern philosophy is just higher above Western philosophy, or what do you think, Western is greater or Eastern is greater? So, you know, that was a question which I said that this is a very subjective question, we cannot answer it in a very binary form. So I said, I just summarized. I want you to elaborate on this. So what I summarized is, I said Eastern philosophy is trying to run away from suffering, Western philosophy is trying to embrace suffering. in a nutshell. So this is what I gave, which was a very mediocre answer, but I want you to elaborate on this one.
Yeah.
and on the fact that we were talking about duality. Nietzsche did not believe in duality, which is pretty good. Why? Because a person is very unfortunate if he does not see the dark side of life, which we tag as dark, right? Like a person who's always thinking himself to be very happy, very ecstatic, in a very, very blissful environment. You know, he's just not witnessed the entirety of life in general. If you have not seen the both facets of the coin, you know, both faces of the coin. So what's your take on that?
Well, first, for somebody to say Eastern, Western, and to suppose they know everything about the East and everything about the West, I have to meet that person. Please show up, because I don't know anyone that knows how all people in the East think, that have talked to everybody in the East, all the billions of people. And of course, the same for the West. And when they say East and West, they're also making up a story that humanity is divided in only two sides of ways of thinking, which is very reductionistic. When I just walk around Brazil, we have more than 300 indigenous native cultures in Brazil, and each culture has more or less a different philosophy, a different outlook on life, which looks the same only from a Western perspective or another very different perspective. But when you really get to know how these different peoples living in different forests around here, so-called indigenous people, and some of them are saying, what's that? What's indigenous? You're labeling us as if we are the same. We're so different. We don't think the world the same. Our cosmology is so radically different. Views of the world, relations even to nature, the natures they live in, they're not all in the Amazon. And even what people think of the Amazon is totally wrong, because the Amazon, when you walk like 100 kilometers, you're in a totally different forest already. It's not the same plants, the same animals. So nature changes drastically, and people have to change their ways and beliefs too. And so somebody to say that, all the West is this, all the East is that, is very problematic. Although you might find specific philosophies, specific thinkers in the East, and compare them to specific philosophies and thinkers in the West. And Nietzsche did that very badly, because Nietzsche had only read a few things from Buddhism, some Buddhism schools, very roughly and very bad translations. So he had this very schematic idea, but it was very influential for him, because that's why he cites Buddhism a lot. And he even, although he critiques Buddhism, for example, and puts it all in a one only basket, as if Buddhism was one thing. But that's also Nietzsche. Like he just wants to make a point, and he's like, Buddhism is this, and like he does in the Antichrist and some other points. But he compares Buddhism to Christianity, and he said Buddhism is better. is less nihilist, is less concerned with a negation, so he's saying like Buddhism would be more an evolved Christianity, like a nobler Christianity, because it's not it's looking at for him, it's looking, this is a whole new element to go into, but it's looking at life not as it doesn't just want any foundation. So it doesn't want it doesn't wish for vengeance against life. And so in that sense, Christianity for him was worse, because vengeance is something coming from a slave morality. It's from somebody that really feels pain against life and wants vengeance against another. So Christianity was very constructed about this idea of fighting evil, right? So this duality. And Buddhism was like, it's all illusions. Don't just take it away from your mind. And the evil and good, or the two sides, are illusions of your consciousness. So that for him was like, that's interesting. But again, Nietzsche didn't know much about Buddhism, all the schools and all the differences. And he was using, I think, Buddhism because his target was much closer to himself, to his own life, as somebody that when he was young was studying to be a future priest, a future Protestant leader, and then gave up later in life when he discovered the studies, the ancients, philosophy, Plato. All this was an opening up of another universe. He's like, oh, this is where everything comes from.
Yeah.
This is where these Christian ideas are coming from, through all these philosophers, from Plato to the Stoics to the early Christian fathers. They're all just copying each other. That's it. They're creating on each other's ideas.
Yeah, improving.
They're not just receiving everything as it said from revelation from God, whatever. No, they're also copying. They're copying each other. And then he was like, okay, let's see what came before Plato. And he's like, oh, there's something different here. The pre-Socratics were radically different. What happened? And then he went he read in Greek. He read in Latin. So he went to the sources. He went to the words they were using, which is very important to understand Plato better, to understand the Stoics, the Roman Stoics in Latin and in Greek. So he went to the pre-Socratics and he's like, there's something radically different here. What happened? And then his first major work was trying to grapple with that. What happened between pre-Socrates and after Plato, after Socrates and Plato. And then he's like, oh, there's a major change happening. And this major change was taken up. And we got into this mess called Christianity, which now produces people to think and live in a certain way that hasn't been so interesting, because people are talking about this life in a way that's not interesting. When the pre-Socratics were like, all there is water, all there is fire. So real things, matter things, material things. Like, all there is this, the cosmos. Deal with it. Deal with the cosmos. Even the Stoics after Plato. But even Plato had this idea of the world of the ideas, but he was not still in a total negation of this world. It's with Christianity that a negation, really a strong negation of the body and of life comes, and which makes up modern man to be a very sad thing in the West, a lost thing, which is like, oh, now I'm an individual having to grapple with my own self as my starting point and the end point. How sad is that? There's no relation to higher values anymore. There's no relation to nature even as central anymore. People are still today in the West trying to recover some sense of being in a larger universe, that is we are part of. We are, in a sense, but we're so thrown at us every day are bits and pieces of this individualization, of this disconnection from the body, of and again, there's no moral about this story. It's not for us to understand the history of Western subjects or culture in a moral way. Oh, we fell. It's again like, it's not that we had a fall and we must recover paradise. Paradise never existed. But there's no one fall. We're full of issues, but we're full of possibilities. The thing is, can we imagine and see possibilities without having this cultural reflection about how we got here? I don't think we can. I don't think we can really come to a deep rethinking about ourselves in the West without rethinking the legacy of Christian subjectivities, Christian forms of ways of thinking about ourselves, our bodies, our legacies of thought that came with it, and this kind of metaphysics, not all metaphysics, but this kind of metaphysics in all its problems. I think I am every day much more convinced that we can only produce meaningful social change if we really tackle and confront these legacies. And that's why I love Nietzsche. I think he says, this is what we have to deal with. This is what's happening. The death of God. What happens after the death of God? We're in another point, but we're still reproducing the problems we had with God as the center, because we still think we have a truth to live by, truths that govern us, and that this alignment with a universal truth is still even if it's now individual, now it's all relative, it's all my truth. It's still within this domain that's so problematic, that's so like, oh, it's only my truth. You cannot talk about my truth. The I, right? The
me,
I comes again.
The ego.
I as a truth. The I as a truth. So it goes many places, right? It doesn't metaphysical truths that came to force with Christianity. They don't just produce subjects that talk about universal truths out there. They can talk about universal truths within the subject, which is very characteristic of Christian subjects. It's like, oh, I have my truth. Do you want to know my truth? My truth is what matters. So we have these, in the age of social media, it's all like people want to show what they truly are, the truths that govern them, and that's their way of showing themselves how good they are, how productive they are, how capable they are of telling them the truth of themselves. And from Nietzsche, Michel Foucault is the one that shows how this happened in Western history, of the subject understanding that his task in life is to govern himself by his interior truth. And sometimes it comes out, sometimes it doesn't. What matters is, for the subject, is that he has an interiority of truth. That's his relation to truth now. It's interior.
Yeah, it's interior.
And then it sometimes has to manifest. And when it manifests, sometimes people will manifest it in the most aggressive and violent ways against another. Like, you're telling me that I don't live in the truth because my truth is this, and you should accept. And of course, they have power. They have the power to exercise that truth.
Yeah, talking about slave morality and the stuff, the religious stuff. So there is, I'd like to quote a couple of lines from my book. So there is this chapter, I guess, yes, chapter 3. So I have given out a story which is about the abyss. So there is this abyss, and there is the protector of the abyss, which is the demon, right? And what every religious person wants to do is, run away from the abyss, just escape the abyss. So what they do is they bribe the demon with their faith to just try and escape from the abyss. So there is this man who is in search of, who is just exploring the abyss, So there was this quote that when you are into the abyss, there's no way out, rather befriending it and exploring its depth. So like the man goes in, so there are milestones. So first milestone, he sees a religious person trying to run away from the abyss, bribing the demon with faith. So he has bought the faith of demon by using his faith. Now he goes deeper into the abyss. He sees a spiritual person, all those people, modern age spiritual person, and he does not have any faith to bribe the demon with. So he tries to manipulate the demon with his words, the spiritual person. And that's what spirituality is all about, manipulating people with their words. So he manipulates the demon and runs away from the abyss. And now the person goes deeper into the abyss. He meets an atheist, a nihilist, and they have nothing. So the demon kills them. And finally, the man is face to face with the demon, and rest you should read in the book. So talking about faith, which is because I left my religion, and me talking about Islam, I left my religion, and I was very much skeptical about my religion when I was a child. Used to ask questions to my father, which for obvious reasons I didn't get answers to. But now being a skeptic, being curious, and publicly disclosing that I no more follow my religion, right? So I got backlash from my relatives, from my friends, from the professors back at my university. So the thing is, I didn't have that sense of fear inside of me, to run away because these people are pointing fingers at me, and I'm like, I'm on a journey to explore stuff way beyond your faith. Because when you tend to indulge in religious debates, and I have been in plenty of religious debate, plethora of religious debates, and when you tend to people who are very, very intellectually dumb, and to people who are rather good debaters, and I've had debate and I was able to protect my stuff. Not debate is nothing to protect yourself, just trying to come up with arguments. So the thing is, all these people rely to is the word faith. What's your take on that? Religious people using faith. This is what is given to us. This is what we have to believe in. Whether the sun rises from the west, in spite of rising from the east, that is by God's will. We have to believe it. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, first, you were talking about the abyss. Nietzsche uses that image a lot of the abyss, right? Yeah. Also, somebody I thought when you were talking that, I don't know if you've read him, Albert Camus.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, talks about the absurd. The absurd for me, when I picture the absurd is like an abyss. And Camus was a Nietzschean. He read a lot of Nietzsche, so I think it could link a lot there. But faith. Faith for me is a question. Is a very interesting philosophical question.
Yep.
If we were to have the answer, I think we would be God. Simply that.
Yeah.
So I stopped the conversation with religious people there. Like, are you God? No, I'm not. Oh, you're not. Then they don't talk to me about faith. Only God would know. But I'm not. That's when, of course, I know I cannot talk to some people. When there are other people, like you said, some people of religious beliefs, they are talkable too. When I feel that, I go into a longer conversation. And then I would start with, okay, faith. What is faith? What is? How do we know? How do we know fate? Well, like you said, well, the sun rises up. Well, the sun has not always existed. Maybe the universe as it is has not always existed. The sun and the earth are changing their speed all the time. The universe is changing speed all the time. The rotation of the earth, just last week, I read something that is changed already by a small amount, but it's rotating faster, which changes the time of the year in a few seconds already.
Yeah.
So we have a few seconds faster now.
Yeah.
We're running a few seconds faster. Where is the stability to be seen in the universe? Nothing is stable. Nothing is stable. And with that, I go with Nietzsche to Heraclitus, the pre-Socratic, that was saying that one sane man cannot go twice into the same river.
Yeah.
Because the second time he goes in,
it changes.
He's not the same man. And the river has passed.
Yeah, for sure.
Flown. Different fish are there, different
particles are different.
Maybe it rained. The same man, a few days later, he's older already, a few days, but how many days does it take for all your body to change your cells in your body?
Yeah.
So this idea of a stable universe with stable truths, that's an interesting philosophical idea, only up to a point. But when we start to look into nature, as you gave the example of the sun, even that is not static, it's changing all the time. So if everything is changing, it doesn't mean that we don't have repetitions, but even those repetitions might be changing. Fate would be then maybe an accumulation.
Okay.
To go with Henri Bergson, a philosopher of time. Fate maybe, just to give another story, not the truth here, but maybe fate is an accumulation of things. And just that, maybe the past is here with us. Everything that's been happening is happening, like the sun is rising up and going down. That's the way we see it, because that's when we look up to the sky, it seems like it's gets up, rises, and goes down.
That's how we want to see it.
But that's the human experience. If you look from another planet, you'll see something else. So everything is as a point of view. We cannot escape that we have a very limited point of view. And that's where Nietzsche comes in to say, well, knowledge. What is knowledge possible for the human? Only a human, all too human knowledge. And even that is very complicated, because we cannot know all the knowledge all the humans have. We only have a very partial knowledge in our condition as humans. If we can have some access to the knowledge of a bird, it's going to be partial too. Very partial, because we're not birds, or a fish, or a tree, or a rock in this universe. So this will to knowledge of the human, it's not very humble, is it? Like, people that talk about something that they claim to be talking about God, the existence of God, but they are thinking they are God. They're not so humble, these people. To me, some of them have killed God already. They just don't know about it, because they're talking for their own God. They're putting words in the mouth of their own God. So they're not very humble. They're not very... all these values that some of the larger religions have, the monotheistic religions especially, they talk about humility so much, but do they practice it? Not really.
Mm.
Not really. I see so many more humble people that call themselves atheists or scientists or nothing at all, or just walking by somebody in the street that has no education, has no school, but is much more of a thinker, philosopher, and even to some point spiritualist or religious for me than somebody that says they know everything about a religion. That I think they are just fucking arrogant people and violent and aggressive people that I don't want to deal with. That sometimes I just have to make them shut up or go away, you know. So because life is struggle, it's something that Nietzsche teaches us. You know, not teaches us, it just makes us see there's no life without struggle. There's no life without a fight. But you won't be that stupid person going after fights. Why? You know, just you make your life happen. If people show up to you, like in your channel, or you're saying, or your podcast, or like they show up at my channel, calling me all kinds of names.
Yeah.
And somebody calls me, oh, you're just a rat, you're just an atheist, or you're just communist.
Yeah,
they have all these labels. And you know what I say to them? And you're just a pirate's parrot. You're just repeating what other people said, other people ways of life. You're a parrot. You're over the pirate's shoulder, repeating the pirate. That's what you are.
You know what I
So
tell these
small.
people? You know what I tell these people? I'd rather be a curious fool than being an intellectual puppet.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And you know what? At the end, it should make us rejoice having this feedback. Like, who is saying this? How does this person live? Well, let me keep on with my life here,
Inexistent speck.
I'm doing pretty well, you know. If I'm being critiqued by these people, I can ignore, or I can just give a rough answer and go on with my life. It just shows that I'm okay. I'm doing okay here. It's not that I'm in the right. No one's in the total right. It's just, for me, when these very reactive people, these herd mentality people, to use Nietzsche's word, these slave morality people, when they use all these, you know, resentment against me, I'm like, oh, I'm just in the right path here. I'm living my life, because all resentful people, they cannot bear to see people that are just living and going forward, affirming themselves, you know, being able to say that you're smart, that you know how to live better today than you knew in the past, or that you don't want to live like these fanatics in churches, whatever they are. Being able to say that and feel that as a relief and as a good path in your life, which doesn't need to transform in a model for anyone. That's the point. That's the point. There's no model, right? Like Zarathustra, he's like, hey man, don't follow me. Make your own path. You don't get it. Just don't follow. Just make your own. Make your own path. That's the thing. You know?
Yeah, I get you. And you know, these people, what I was talking about, these people come and tag me. All these religious people, all they know about is who an atheist is. You know, if he's speaking, critiquing God, criticizing God, then he's an atheist. And you know what I tell these people? Like, why have they killed God? Let's take a different perspective to this. These people cannot hear any criticism towards God. They are like protecting God, like it is some dead entity. You know how people memorize, make memorials of a dead person. You know how they remember a dead person. They cannot hear anything bad about a dead person. It's like God is dead. God is dead, and you cannot hear anything bad about him. You know, it's God is just in your memories, because God never spoke. God is just like in your memories. It's a memorial for you. You are worshipping him or it as deities and all that stuff. You know, so you are just worshipping a corpse. You are a lunatic devotee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you speak for somebody else, because many religions have this idea of God as anthropomorphic, as formed in the image of a man. When you speak for this other, you killed him already.
Yeah.
This other is not speaking for himself. You've killed him. Yeah, exactly.
So
So
yeah.
Nietzsche is not an atheist in the sense that he just doesn't know if God exists. So what could be God? He's much more interested in saying, when you say God, what are you saying? What are you doing? What's happening here? And in Christianity, this has a story. He's critiquing that, the effects of that on people's ways of living, valuing life or disvaluing, actually, right? Charging against themselves and life. That's the issue. That's why it became a problem. If the so-called God of Christianity was life affirming, he would affirm it. You know?
Yeah.
Like, what does God tell us? Oh, God tells us, make the best of your body, take care of your body, but treat it as a natural thing and divine at the same time that it is. If it was that, he's like, oh, good. Then sensuality is not a total issue. It's not evil. I'm not a sinner by nature. Oh, that's interesting. The world is not done. Like good and evil are already pre-selected for me. It's much more open than that. That's interesting to live in. It's not a prison. But Western subjectivities live in a prison, and so many other religious subjectivities live in a prison of the moral right, the moral wrong. You get punished. You get silenced. You get all sorts of violations against you for trying out what life has as possibilities. If God made all these possibilities, if there's a God that made all these possibilities, why would he? There's no he for me. He is already strange, right?
Yeah.
Why would this thing called God? It's not for me. It's not a man, a bearded man sitting somewhere and judging us. That's a very weird thing.
Yeah.
Like for Nietzsche, all the energies of life, they go through everything. Through everything. If I'm to think of naming God, I would go with Spinoza. That God is in everything. God's manifestations of God are everything that exists. Everything. And then, of course, there are more interesting ways that we can access for ourselves, that we can find in our life to make those manifest. There are less interesting ways of this God manifesting for us, but there's no universal charter or rules to follow for that to work. You have to do your work. You have to do your own experimentation to know what works in your life. That's the hard thing. People are scared of that, maybe. Of having to put the work to find out for themselves what in their life is a good experimentation, because it's risky. It's risky. It might go wrong, if you're not prudent enough. Taking a thought like Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, for example, Nietzsche was for a long time scared of that, and he makes Zarathustra go through that, because for himself it was a heavy burden to take on. Like, well, what if everything that happened were to happen again, and I would know that? Would I affirm it again? Would I say yes to life if all my life were to happen the same exact way again? Would I be affirmative of it, or would I negate it and say, oh no, thank you, I don't want it anymore, I want out? Or would I affirm? And then Zarathustra is the character that Nietzsche creates to go through that experience, to have that experience of having such a life, such a high affirmation of life, as to say, if I were to live everything the same way again, I'll take it on. I'll live it again.
Yeah.
Because that thought, if you take in that thought right now, you have from now on, you think that everything you do has a certain weight, which is it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
That's a heavy burden for some people that are in full negation, for example. They are just waiting to go to heaven or somewhere else, or to be judged, or are judging themselves already. If they feel heavy, if they feel life is too much, then they're like, oh, I have felt this before and I'm still feeling it, and I'm going to feel it for eternity. Oh, what now?
Yeah.
I can't get out of this. Oh, this is too heavy.
Yeah.
And Nietzsche's like, well, do you think there's nothing you can do? You really think there's nothing you can do? Think again. Try again.
Yeah.
So it's like, do you think you don't create your reality as well?
Yeah.
You think reality is just given? Really? Well, if you think that way, continue thinking that way, see what happens. But I don't think it's going to be interesting if you think life is a burden to continue to think that way. So you have to, in a way, Nietzsche's like giving us a way to have to weigh ourselves, our ways of thinking and being in the world, rethink, react, experiment in a new way, And of course, he's doing that, thinking highly over this stigma on life by Christianity, this negation of life.
Yeah, this concept of eternal recurrence, that a demon comes and tell you this. So this is quite beautiful, and this is the real self-help, if we talk about,
yeah. Although very different, right?
Yeah,
the real one.
Yeah, the real self-help, what Nietzsche is trying to preach, not what nihilism is trying to say, or not what all these.
It's so different from self-help, because normal self-help, dominant self-help is like, here's the solution.
Solution is an escape.
And Nietzsche is not giving the solution. He's like, the solution is, man, there's no solution.
No solution, because solution is an escape.
Just find it. It's day-to-day work.
Yeah.
It's day-to-day, continuous work.
Yeah.
Continuous.
Yeah, so this is a mistake which people tend to make. They try to find a solution for a problem, and a solution might just be an escape to a problem. How far you're going to run from your problem? It's just a temporary escape. It's a process.
It's an illusion.
Yeah, it's an illusion.
Nietzsche is like, oh, you don't want to do the work. You don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
The work, as philosophers have shown us in the West for a long time, even, like from Plato to the Stoics, they're like, the work is daily attention to what you're doing with your mind, with your body. And it doesn't stop. When you think you stopped, you're wrong already. Because life is a continual process of overcoming that, of change.
Like you have read too much about Nietzsche, right? And the thing is, more than us, for obvious reasons. Like for a person who is too much into suffering, too much into pain, agonizing pain, internal pain, not some sort of physical pain. So how would you, like someone, let's say, is going through a divorce, a 25 years marriage, and his wife cheated on him, let's take a hypothetical situation. He is in agonizing pain. So how will you explain him the thing which we were talking about, solution is an escape? Like that person is looking for instant a magic pill, someone who is going through suffering is looking for a magic pill. How will you articulate that this is how you can cope up with your suffering and problem? So what's your take on that?
I don't know. There's no magical answer, right? One needs to experiment. But the highest experimentation is already to get away from that idea that there's someone to blame. There's someone to put a fault on, either oneself or the other, or God or whatever.
Yeah, bad faith.
Yeah, and that life changes.
Okay, yeah.
And life is unpredictable. And to fully immerse yourself in that is a certain form of liberation from the wish of any guarantee in life. Marriage is no guarantee. There's no guarantee in marriage. It's a lie when people say, well, if you're marrying here, God wanted it this way and you should be together all your life. It's a lie. Some stupid man created that because they had to dominate women, because they had to dominate other men through the women. It's always like that. It's always like patriarchy, you know. Marriage is very patriarchal. I am practically married to a woman for 11 years now. It's my second marriage, but I know I'm not her owner. We're not even married now. We're together for 11 years. My first marriage, I married and then I divorced. And I was very sad because I thought I was going to be with her for the rest of my life. And I thought life had something wrong.
I did not have that background, you know.
I wasn't a Nietzschean in a way at the time.
Okay.
I wasn't. I really wanted a full guarantee. Like I was Christian at the time in a way. I was not a practitioner, believer.
Okay.
I consider myself very atheist.
Okay.
Although today I rethink even atheism. I don't label myself in any way anymore. But when my first marriage ended, I was like very, very sad and vindictive against life. I'm like, why? This should not have happened. And then I changed again, and life showed me other things, and I rethought all of this.
Okay.
In the way I'm talking now, that life does not owe us anything. Life has no guarantees. Life just happens. And in this sense, it doesn't mean there's no fate. It doesn't mean, it does mean we don't, if there is such, we don't have access to it as small human perspectival beings of reality that we are. But we think life owes us sometimes, you know. So I think to cope with life's unpredictabilities, we, in a way, there is a lot to be learned from philosophy, like the Stoics that were already always preparing themselves for the unpredictable that could happen. You know, we should expect that the unpredictable is going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to
so
happen.
many aspects of our lives, you know.
Yeah.
But then again, somebody that loses somebody they love very much in one day, we can't expect the person not to suffer the next days and months, maybe. Who knows? You know, every person is an experience. Every reality is different.
Yeah.
But I think that when somebody has so many cultural and philosophical thoughts ingrained in them that wished for continuity as a guarantee of life, like, oh, I'm married and I'm going to be married with this person for the rest of my life, that when that is ingrained in the person, that's a problem. That's a problem. It's not a problem if it never happens. If a person never divorces, it's almost confirming the law. But when divorce comes, then the person is not prepared for it. When the person thinks that life has one way to go, or marriage, when you marry, go with that person, you know. There are many situations. I'm just giving an example.
Yeah, I get you. You know,
Nietzsche helps in that because he's all about thinking life as a constant chaos,
100%.
a constant flux that's unpredictable. That we have a place, a space to play in it, a creative place to play in it, but we are never in control. We are never in control of everything that happens with us, and as an effect of our actions too. We're never in full control of ourselves, you know, or of the other, or of the world.
Yeah, this saying of predicting the unpredictable. Like when my father passed away, I didn't have a very beautiful relationship with my father. Every guy who is a teenager, 20, 21, 22. So I'm 22. So does not this there is this constant rivalry of who is the man of the house, psychological rivalry. And me writing a book, me giving out my thoughts is not because I want to be a philosopher. I'm not a philosopher wannabe. It's just something happened. I didn't take death to be very serious, and many people would say it is not very serious, everyone has to go. But someone who is in front of you, walking, talking with you, eating with you, sharing the same bed I used to sleep with my father, and then him going all of a sudden. And religion is something which caused the friction. Religion caused the friction because everyone is not unshackled. Everyone, you cannot think like us, like you. So he was like, why ain't my son praying? Why ain't my son offering namaz? Why ain't my son doing this? This thing torments me now, because this is something which is absolute BS now, as we know of, and creating rifts and friction between people. So what I did was, instead of crying, instead of wasting my life away, that I didn't spend the best amount of time with my father, I turned that thing around, channeled my emotions on writing a book, preaching philosophy, talking to people like you.
That's excellent. That's excellent, because that is a creative way of dealing with life's unpredictabilities. That's the best thing. And because you could very much turn other ways and say, become a dogmatic person, or go inward and very sad and just stay there. Of course there's sadness, but you're turning that sadness into action. That energy. Sadness is a form of energy. When something happens to us and makes us sad, there's a lot of accumulated energy. And one way to go is to create something. Art, a new way of life, a new way of to think, to feel, a new way to feel yourself in the world, a new you, in a way, another you. Another you that was maybe already there too. So there are ways. But again, we go back to the beginning of our conversation today, when we're talking about, it's not only suffering that can bring that, other ways as well. Other experiences in the world should also be openness to creativity. It's not only suffering.
It's
but
not only
suffering certainly accumulates energy. Joy can also accumulate energy and produce other things, So that's great that you did that, that you knew how to channel, because I think that's channeling energy. Some people keep that bad energy with them and then can develop it into even this mental or physical disease,
For sure.
If you're channeling it, you're doing something with it, and you can cure yourself and go ahead,
And my message to all the people watching this stream would be that once you start channeling, this suffering, this thing, that this pain which I'm going through is not imposed by myself onto me. It's something which went according to the will of nature, will of God, will of the universe, whatever you claim it to be. So just many beautiful things. So the book which I've been writing, I cannot still believe how beautiful some couple of lines come out so beautifully, and I still don't believe what have I written, not having any premise of reading philosophy or books. So this is the only message I would like to give. And coming back to Nietzsche, I would like to ask you, Nietzsche was himself tormented with physical ailments, all those diseases he had. So, and he went through suffering. And what people say, optimistic people, so-called optimistic people, what they claim themselves to be, they say that, okay, you're going through suffering, but there is something good which is kept for you. there is something good to come. There is good in everything.
Compensation.
Compensation. Yeah. So like when you look at the life of Nietzsche, I was going through the life of Nietzsche like a couple of months ago, and I had literal tears in my eye because I was able to relate his story with mine. And literal tears. Why?
Yeah.
Because he didn't see any good. He didn't, what we as humans claim to be good, he saw suffering, rejections, marriage proposal rejections, his father passing away, his sister, his mother not accepting him, society not accepting him, his books not being sold, him publishing his books, he's going through
lots
pain.
of rejection.
Lots of rejection, nobody attending his lectures, 2 or 3 or 4 people attending his lectures. So what do you think about Nietzsche? I mean he has given masterpieces, so what do you think? Book writing was his way of coming out of it, pouring himself out?
Yeah, for sure. Thinking, examining himself, having an intense life too, like doing what he felt was better for his body, for his mind, having fun too, having friends to talk about issues that matter to him, and transforming the rejection, the suffering into the channeling of a creativity, not wishing for life to pay him back.
Yes.
Taking over life in his own hands. Not wishing any payback. Like recognition, like fame, like money, like friends, and lots of friends. He had a few friends, and that was it for him. And he really came into an experience of being somebody that really did not expect anything from life. Just said, let's go. I don't expect anything. There's nothing you have to give me.
Yeah.
His conversation with life, like Zarathustra talks through life in the Zarathustra. His conversation with life was like, oh, you showed up. Oh, nice.
Okay.
What do you want? Oh, you want that? Okay, nice. Okay, see you later. It doesn't matter. There's nothing I have to give to you. Nothing you have to give to me. Let's just live.
Yeah.
Let's go. There's no manual for life.
Yeah.
There's no high expectation to be reached. You just live, and you make it make sense for you. And that's all. And that's all.
Yeah.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
But he made it in such a way, in such a powerful way that we're talking about him.
Yes.
Such a powerful experience of life, such an intense relation to oneself and to the world that it's almost like few people came to be able to have, I think. I'm pretty sure. Because especially when you're pointing to such a hard life, it would be so easy for some people to just kill themselves or succumb or to be vengeful or to be resentful. And of course, he had resentment to be able to talk about resentment. He felt it too, but he felt it and then he wanted to overcome it. He felt guilt and wanted to overcome it. He felt it, the idealism, and wanted to overcome it. And that's why he's able to put it in words and in history in such a beautiful way, to recognize it as a historical, cultural construction. And in that sense, to offer us a way to free ourselves, at least partially, from these constructions, these historical, cultural legacies. So he helped us.
Yeah.
In helping himself, he ended up I can say helping me a lot, because for some time I was a metaphysical philosopher, a metaphysical thinker,
Okay.
very resentful with life, very much wanted to be compensated for living.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I get you. Yeah. So you have embraced his philosophy. Like we can go on and on for hours
Yeah, and
talking.
I embraced in a way that is
Yeah.
very open, which is the way he wanted.
You understood the philosophy. Nietzsche is not.
Yeah,
Nietzsche, like many people take Nietzsche to be read Nietzsche or take Nietzsche to be a fad, a fashion. Like he's a cool philosopher. He's pessimistic,
yeah,
so
yeah,
he is pessimistic, so he's very cool. Not trying to grasp the
yeah.
essence of Nietzsche. So
Yeah,
you
and
grasp.
even this category of pessimistic, but the pessimism for Nietzsche only comes after an optimism, or with an optimism
Yeah.
towards affirming life. So you cannot be a critical thinker in a way Nietzsche is without having a high optimism for life. So there's no high pessimism without a high optimism.
I was about to quote this. Yeah, I was about to quote this, that people claim themselves to be very optimistic, but they are like, they have taken life and optimism for granted. They have no fire left in themselves. No fire left in themselves. So why Nietzsche?
Nietzsche's optimism is not about saying yes.
Yes.
Like a stupid person saying yes to everything.
Yes, that's what it is. Like his pessimism is what created the masterpieces he has given, because when you are pessimistic, it is very good, because there is this constant fire to achieve something. There might be something going through his head to achieve something. We cannot tag him that he wanted to achieve something, but there might be something. Him writing down his books, because he was in that constant fire. He didn't take life for granted. He didn't take life for granted, what optimistic people do. And we can go on and on. Rodrigo, we can go on and on.
With Nietzsche, we can go on and on because that's the things he talked about were exactly about opening ourselves to life, and life is constantly flowing. So that's why we can talk without stopping.
Yeah.
So, but we should stop.
Yeah, we should stop because we have a couple of questions right here, and then we'll proceed towards a small rapid fire round. 5 questions.
Let's just go through the questions.
There are a couple of questions. So, someone is asking, why shall humans exist? In philosophical sense, not religious one.
Why shall humans exist? Why shall humans exist? That's a good question. I would say keep asking it. That's one of philosophical questions are to be lived and rethought again and again and again. This is a very good one. This is a very good one that many philosophers asked, but those that put an endpoint to it, Nietzsche is not one, they were wrong. Because if we're, like we were saying right now, if we're still here, the why has not come to an end. The why of existence cannot be settled unless we're finished. And even when we're finished, who's going to be there later to tell the why, And philosophical questions, they much more show the limits of our knowledge that we can tackle with and that are interesting to tackle with, that make us think, because knowledge, real philosophical knowledge, is at the limits of our so-called scientific or common sense knowledge. Philosophical knowledge is about tackling the limits of what is known. So if we're talking about philosophically about humans, if we answer that question with a final answer, we're not doing philosophy anymore. We're not. We're outside of philosophy already. Philosophy is about continually reflecting about the major questions that keep our thinking going without stop, while life is not stopping. While we're living, we're thinking, and maybe we are thinking when we are tackling with the limits, the borders of what we think we know. Maybe we're thinking there. And then maybe we're asking the good questions. For me, this is a good question, but hey, that's it. If it's philosophical, it should not be answered once and for all. Why do we exist? Why do we exist? What are the we here? What does the we presuppose? Does the we presuppose a sameness? That when we say human, we're all the same? Don't we have humans that are not humans anymore living in the middle of us? Because humans changed throughout history. You had human Neanderthals, sapiens, erectus. These are locatable as different kinds of so-called humans. Haven't we changed in the last 100, 200 years in our capabilities, in our ways of being? Maybe. I don't know. But the question is about the why. About the why. And to answer why we exist, we would have to answer why does the world exist. And to answer why the world exists, I don't think humans were adapted, were created to know this. And then I'm Nietzschean. Then I'm like, humans don't have an organ for knowledge in the sense that of full knowledge. So humans cannot answer this question of why humans exist. Because humans, to answer that question of why humans exist, would need to answer as well, why does everything else exist? But we're only human. We're only a part. We're only a perspective of the whole. We cannot answer for the whole. So philosophically, we cannot answer that question.
That is why subjects like epistemology, the knowledge of knowledge, subjects like full-fledged subject, epistemology, metaphysics, what lies beyond physical, and the knowledge of epistemology was, in a way developed to combat existential crisis of why are we existing, why should we exist, so the whole people are studying this in PhDs and doing researches on this, so one cannot put this in a box.
And again, epistemology will talk about very interior process of the human and stop there. It's not talking about the world
in general.
It's not talking about existence
so
in general.
For sure. So we shall move to the rapid fire round. 6 questions. You have to answer them in either a word or a line. Okay. So
very hard.
No, not very hard. You can do this. So okay. Question number 1. One line by Nietzsche which hits you. A quote by Nietzsche or a line which has changed your life forever.
One line. One. It's so hard. Although Nietzsche wrote so many one lines.
So many one liners.
It's so hard to come to just one. It's a heavy thing to do, but make it. I'll just think of, because we talked about the abyss. I stayed with that phrase. That when you look too long into the abyss looks back at you.
In a nutshell, can you explain that by Nietzsche? In a nutshell, briefly.
It's very hard in a nutshell, because it's so powerful.
I know.
But when you start to delve into to big things or the unknown, things start showing up to you and you have to deal with them in ways you might not be prepared to.
Okay.
So it's scary, it's hard, because the unknown is unknown. It can do many things to you that you won't know. The abyss is this. It's a limit of the unknown, and it's always there.
Okay.
And so you like the philosophical question that was just raised.
Why?
It's the unknown, right? You're tacking into the unknown, but be careful when you do it.
Yeah.
Because it's going to come back at you, and you have to have strength and prudence to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be easy for sure to deal with the unknown.
Yeah. Okay.
At the same time, it could be very powerful and life-changing.
Yeah, for sure. Question number 2.
Yeah.
Your favorite book written by Nietzsche?
The Gay Science.
The Gay Science.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this is again, you're gonna bash me on this one, but still I'm gonna ask this question. Nietzsche's philosophy in a line or one word which you would like to use, or one line to tell Nietzsche's philosophy, what would it be?
Interestingly enough, if I were to say one word that always comes to my mind when I think of Nietzsche's philosophy, is blood.
Okay.
And that's interesting because that was such a high theme for Hitler, right? But Hitler's blood was blood with a vengeance, blood that Nietzsche critiqued.
Yes.
Nietzsche was talking from another blood, which was like a living body. Wanting for this blood to flow with excitement. Or a philosophy with blood, as Nietzsche said, would be a living philosophy, a way of life that's not resentful against life, that is affirmative of itself flowing, that is of a great health of the body, of the mind, of the spirit, just flowing like a river, flowing, changing continuously. So blood comes to my mind a lot.
Interesting. Yeah.
A philosophy with blood in the veins flowing.
Yeah, very interesting.
Intensity. Living intensity.
And a big contrast between Hitler and Nietzsche.
Yeah, it's also very provocative to think of that.
Yeah. Life lesson by Nietzsche that everyone should stick to. One life lesson that is above all.
I think lessons that everyone should stick to should always be negative lessons. Should always be deconstructive lessons. Should just be like, think again.
Okay.
Just that. Because otherwise it would be going against everything Nietzsche says. Just think again. Think everything again and again and again. Just rethink reflect.
And reconstruct.
Yeah. Maybe you rethink and think the same again. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you think again. Other than that, there's nothing very universal about Nietzsche. It's all the contrary to that, right? It's a critique of any universal.
Yeah. Okay. Your piece of wisdom for the younger generation. One piece of wisdom from your side. Coming from you.
Well, for the younger generations, all we can say is like, know your history, man. And Nietzsche can help. And others. Even if you live in the East, anywhere in the world, this world was globalized by a certain Western dominance of ways of style, of now the internet. with language, thoughts, Nietzsche, everything comes in a sort of dominance of individualization, of corporate capitalism. So just know where all these things are coming from. They have a history, which means that they can be reproduced or they can be challenged. And that's why Nietzsche is important. We can reproduce and challenge legacies and histories and cultures, and that's it. Other than that, there's no schema that I can tell the younger generations to move forward. They'll have to find out for themselves, like I'm doing for myself, and my communities.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The last question, the most important one of this whole of all these questions. There was so much to talk about. So, will you come back for another podcast in the near future?
Sure, why not? Let's give it some time for people to digest this one.
Not very soon. Not very soon.
We'll come back.
Yeah, I'll not trouble you very soon, but for sure.
No problem.
But for sure.
And I want to read your book when you have it ready. Please let me know.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, for sure. So we had a beautiful and interesting flow of conversation. One of the better podcasts I've ever had. Thank you, Rodrigo.
Thank you. Thank you so much
for joining in. Spreading your wisdom, talking more about Nietzsche, enlightening people of who Nietzsche really was. How his philosophy really can work in your life. If you are looking for a miracle, Nietzsche's philosophy can really work as a miracle in your life. You just need to have a good sense of understanding him, not looking him down, not like looking too much up to him, but just trying to understand who he was and what his philosophies was. And our man Rodrigo, knowing his stuff, really articulated very well. Thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you so much
for your time. And I'll just end the stream. Okay, and then we'll
bye
have a small conversation. Thank you, people. Please go and subscribe Rodrigo's channel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. I've ended the stream.